Hey everyone, good day and welcome back to the Daily Signal, where we make sense of what's really happening behind the biggest story in cybersecurity. Over the last few weeks, we have seen a storm of major incidents: the Oracle e-business suite 0-day, the F5 nation-state breach, the Collins Aerospace ransomware attack, and even the AWS outage that froze half the internet for hours. Different stories, different headlines, but here's the twist: they all have something in common. They all remind us that one weak link in a digital supply chain can ripple through the entire enterprise world. Today, we are going to break down exactly why these incidents matter, what connects them, and how every company, including yours, is sitting on the same type of dependency risks. We'll build a risk map together, explore some doom scenarios, and end with a clear, actionable series of steps you can take right now to reduce your exposure. So stay tuned, because by the end of this video you will not only see the big picture, you will know how to protect your business before the next big domino falls. Alright, so let's start by connecting the dots between the biggest cyber stories that have dominated the headlines lately. First up, the Oracle e-business suite 0-day, exploited by the Clop ransomware group. This wasn't a random attack, a random hack. It was a global campaign. Clop found a pre-auth flaw that didn't even require login, allowing them to quietly break into enterprise ERP systems and steal data from dozens of companies at once. University, airliners, financial firms, you name it. Oracle rushed out to emergency patches within a week, but by then the damage was already spreading. Then came the F5 breach, a completely different kind of attack, but with the same systemic risk. Nation-state actors, reportedly linked to China, spent over a year inside F5's corporate network, stealing source code and zero-day vulnerability data. That's the software used by 80% of Fortune 500 companies to handle critical traffic and application delivery. No data encryption, no ransom, just silent espionage. And that's even scarier because it means those vulnerabilities could now be weaponized at any time. Next, the Collins Aerospace ransomware attack. This one had a real-world impact. When their check-in and board system was hit, airports across Europe went down. Flights delayed, travelers stranded, chaos in terminals, all because one vendor got locked out of their own network. It was a textbook example of how a simple supplier outage can create a domino effect across an entire industry. And finally, the AWS outage a couple of days ago. Not an attack this time, but the result felt exactly the same. A fault in one region, US East 1, the default region for most services, took down websites, apps, and cloud workloads across the globe. It reminded everyone that even without hackers, over-reliance on one provider can cause widespread disruption. Different incidents, so different motives, from cybercrime to espionage to technical failure, but the outcome always the same: a single point of failure impacting thousands of organizations at once. That's the pattern we are seeing, and it's reshaping the way enterprises think about risk. In the next slide, we'll dig deeper into why these incidents keep happening, the structural weaknesses in how we build, connect, and trust our digital ecosystem. So why do these incidents keep happening? Because we have built an entire digital world on dependencies. Layers of vendors, platforms, and integrations that all connect to each other like one massive web. Let's take a closer look. At the top of that web, you've got big names: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, the infrastructure that practically every business depends on. In fact, AWS alone controls almost 38% of the global IaaS market, infrastructure as a service, while Azure sits at about 24%, and Google Cloud follows with around 9%. That means 3 companies now hold the backbone of the world's digital operations. It's efficient, sure, but it also means a single region failure like the AWS US East one can impact millions of users and thousands of businesses simultaneously. Then there's the control plane problem, identity and CI/CD. Think about your Okta instance, if you have one. The digital front door to every SaaS, so software as a service, tool in your stack. Okta now secures nearly 20,000 enterprises. And if that door gets picked, one stolen session, one compromised admin token, attackers can jump directly into Microsoft 365, Salesforce, ServiceNow, or GitHub without breaking a sweat. That's the ultimate one key to unlock them all. And that leads us to integration sprawl, the web of connections between systems. Every time you connect Salesforce to a marketing app or ServiceNow to your HR platform or Jenkins to GitHub, you're effectively adding one more digital bridge. The average enterprise today uses over 130 software as a service or SaaS applications, and most of them are connected through OAuth tokens or API keys that rarely expire. It's convenient, but it also creates invisible attack paths. We saw that play out actually in the Klopp Oracle EBS campaign. They didn't need phishing or stolen credentials. They exploited a pre-auth bug, and because so many organizations used the exact same ERP platform, the same vulnerability worked everywhere. 1 0 day, dozens of victims. The F5 breach is another layer of the same story. Attackers didn't target a single company. They targeted a vendor that sits in front of everyone else's networks. By compromising F5, they gain insight into potential vulnerabilities across hundreds of customer environments. So when you put this all together, what you get is a funnel. At the top, a small number of global suppliers. In the middle, shared technologies like identity, edge services, CI/CD pipelines, and so on and so forth. At the bottom, thousands of enterprises relying on them every single day. The result? Well, one vulnerability, one misconfiguration, or one outage at the top can cascade down that funnel and hit everyone below. This is the structural weakness of the modern digital economy. Efficiency built on fragility. And that's exactly what we are going to explore next, where those vulnerabilities exist inside a typical enterprise and how attackers can exploit them. All right, let's bring this closer to home. Where exactly are enterprises like ours most exposed? If we map out a typical digital ecosystem, it usually looks something like this. At the foundation, again, you have your cloud infrastructure, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, hosting everything from production workloads to backups. Then sitting on top of that, there's the identity layer, your Okta, Microsoft Entra, Ping, or whatever you use to authenticate users and connect systems. That's followed by the business layer, platforms like Oracle E-Business Suite, Workday, SAP, Salesforce, and ServiceNow, where your most sensitive data actually lives. Financials, HR records, customer data, and supplier information. And finally, around the edges, you've got collaboration and edge systems, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Zoom, Slack, Cloudflare, and CDN networks, the tools that keep your workforce and customers connected. It looks solid on paper until you realize how intertwined everything is. Take the F5 breach, for example. Attackers didn't go after a single customer. They went after the vendor that connects thousands of consumers and customers. That's what we call infrastructure agency. You might not be the target, but your provider's compromise instantly becomes your problem. The Collins Airspace attack was similar, but with a physical twist. When the airport check-in software went down, airlines and passengers worldwide felt the pain. That's what happens when an entire industry shares a critical supplier. The failure of one system cascades through everyone's operations. And it's not just about outages. Look at identity, the control plane for everything. When Okta suffered breaches in the past, we saw token theft and session hijacking that spread laterally into connected SaaS platforms, software as a service. If your identity provider is compromised, every app downstream is potentially wide open, from your collaboration tools to your production databases. Then you've got the ERP and CRM layer, systems like Oracle EBS and Salesforce. We saw how Klopp exploited Oracle EBS to steal financial and HR data directly from organizations that thought they were safe behind enterprise-grade platforms. That's data you can't easily replace. Payroll records, invoices, intellectual property, and beyond those, there's the edge layer. Providers like Cloudflare or Akamai that handles DNS, routing, and application delivery. When one of them goes down or gets compromised, authentication, redirects, and web access for thousands of companies can fail in an instant. So if we overlay this, we can see the critical zones. Cloud, the foundation everyone stands on. One failure, everyone fails. Identity, the gatekeeper. If breached, everything downstream is exposed. ERP and CRM, the vault, where the business crown jewels are stored. Edge and CDN, the front door. If it fails, your customer can't even reach you. Each of these layers is essential, but together they create a complex web of shared trust and, of course, shared risk. And attackers know exactly where to aim. I mean, not at the end users per se, but at the platforms we all rely on every single day. In the next slide, we'll dive into the so-called key threat archetypes emerging from this structure. The main playbooks attackers are using to exploit these dependencies and then cause, of course, maximum impact. Now that we have mapped where enterprises are exposed, let's talk about how attackers are actually exploiting those weaknesses. The main threat archetypes shaping this new reality are on this slide. Think of this as the 5 playbooks. The last 2 items are actually together that we keep seeing. Different methods, same goal. Maximum impact through shared dependencies. At the number 1, we have the identity domino. This is where everything starts. Attackers go after the identity provider, Okta, Entra, Ping, any platform that manages access across your SaaS and cloud stack. Why this? Because identity is the control plane. Steal a single admin session or OAuth or token, and you have instant access to Microsoft 365, Salesforce, ServiceNow, GitHub, and even production systems. We have seen this before: the Okta support breach, token theft incidents, and even supply chain style compromises that turned into full-blown SaaS cascades. Identity attacks are no longer side quests. They have become the new initial access vector. Number 2, we have the CI/CD supply chain vector. This one's more stealthy, but just as dangerous. Threat actors infiltrate your development pipeline through GitHub Actions, Jenkins, or build servers, and tamper with your artifacts before they ever hit production. It's how the SolarWinds compromise happened, and it's why the F5 breach is so worrying. Those attackers stole vulnerability research and source code that could later fuel familiar and similar backdoor operations. Remember, GitHub now has over 150 million developers and is used by 90% of the Fortune 100. If an attacker compromises a popular library or automation workflow, they don't need to breach you directly. They just wait for you to pull the poison update. Number 3, the SAS to SAS data siphon. This is about integrations. All those connectors between Salesforce, Slack, ServiceNow, and marketing tools. It's very convenient, but every OAuth authentication and connection is an open bridge between systems. Attackers love this because it bypasses firewalls, bypasses MFA, and exploits trust. We saw similar techniques in the Klopp Oracle EBS campaign, where one bug gave access to sensitive financial data across dozens of organizations. Now imagine the same approach through a compromised app integration. Quiet, fast, and devastating. Number 4, the ERP extortion rerun or zero-day extortion. This is the Klopp playbook in action. Find a zero-day in a widely used enterprise platform, Oracle, SAP, and exploit it at scale. In the EBS case, attackers didn't encrypt anything. They just stole data and demanded ransom. It's very efficient, repeatable, and highly profitable. And because ERPs are full of confidential financial information, HR, of course, supply chain data, the leverage for extortion is enormous. Klopp's Oracle campaign is the proof that cyber criminals are now operating more like nation states, in a way that they invest in zero days, automate exploitation, and monetize through mass extortion. And finally, number 5, connecting the edge outage chain reaction, so edge CDN outage and cloud region brownout. Even when no one is actually attacking, things can still go very wrong. The AWS outage showed how a technical fault in one region can ripple through thousands of companies. Now imagine the same event caused intentionally. Could be a Cloudflare misconfiguration, a BGP hijack, or an edge service attack. The result is exactly the same. Websites down, apps unreachable, customers cut off, and businesses grinding to a halt. We have become so dependent on cloud and edge providers that a single regional failure is now a global event. So across all of these, whether it's identity, CI/CD, SAS integration, ERP platforms, or the edge layer, the pattern is quite clear. Attackers are targeting the shared layers of trust that bind the enterprise world together. In the next slide, we'll take all of these threat archetypes and map them on a risk hit matrix, showing you which ones are most likely to happen and which could do the most damage if they do happen. So here's where we turn all those scenarios, those 5 scenarios, into something quite visual, the risk hit matrix. The matrix shows 2 things: how likely each event is to happen in the next 12 to 18 months, and how big the impact would be if it did. It's not theoretical, it's based on real incidents, real numbers, and the patterns we have seen in Oracle, F5, Collins Aerospace, AWS, and many others in the past. So let's start right at the top. The so-called tier 1 risks, the ones with both high likelihood and a catastrophic impact. The first one is the cloud region outage. We have already seen how a single AWS region can actually trigger internet-wide chaos. Again, AWS alone, holding about 38% of the global cloud market, while Azure and Google Cloud covering another 30% combined. So we're talking about almost 70% overall. That means that a fault, or worse, a targeted attack in just one region could ripple through millions of workloads across thousands of businesses in minutes. It's not just possible, it's happened more than once actually. Next is the identity cascade, the so-called Okta domino effect. Identity is now the control plane for the entire enterprise. Okta manages over 19,000 enterprise tenants, and one compromised session token can open doors to Microsoft 365, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and GitHub all at once. We have seen this exact technique in the past Okta and SAML token theft campaigns, and it's one of the fastest way for an attacker to pivot between SaaS platform without triggering MFA. The third tier 1 risk is the CI/CD supply chain backdoor. Remember SolarWinds? That was the blueprint. Attackers compromise the build pipeline, often through GitHub Actions or Jenkins, and inject malicious code directly into signed software updates. It's silent, it's scalable, and it works because GitHub now powers development for 90% of the Fortune 100 companies. If that pipeline gets poisoned, the damage isn't contained to one company, it spreads downstream to every customer who trusts that code. Now, moving down, we go to the tier 2, high impact but slightly lower likelihood. Here we find the M365 OAuth exfiltration threat. Microsoft 365 is basically everywhere. Over 430 million paid commercial users. And attackers love using malicious content requests to gain persistent access to mailboxes and OneDrive files. It bypasses MFA, uses legitimate tokens, and is often missed by traditional monitoring. Then there's the edge or CDN outage, a classic single point of failure. Cloudflare alone protects 36% of the Fortune 500, which means one bad configuration or targeted attack can take down websites, APIs, and login portals across entire sectors. Next, we have the Salesforce data siphon, the risk of compromised integrations. Salesforce Open API model is powerful, but it's also a risk if OAuth connected apps are breached. With more than 150,000 Salesforce customers, even a small exploit in their ecosystem can lead to a massive amount of data leakage. And finally, in the tier 2, we have the ERP extortion rerun, basically the CLOP model. 0 days in Oracle or SAP systems, followed by large-scale data theft and extortion. We saw exactly that with the CVE 2025 61884 and 61882. Actually, I have a specific video on those where a pre-auth flow allowed data exfiltration without any user login. It's the digital version of breaking into the vault. Then at tier 3 we have operational and visibility risks. At ServiceNow automation hijack, so this is basically a rogue service account or misconfigured API triggering changes that break systems or expose data. We have the Google Workspace tenant leakage, where misconfigured sharing or rogue OAuth apps quietly leak sensitive documents to the outside world. So when we look at the risk matrix, here's what it really tells us. Most of these risks are not theoretical anymore. They are active patterns. Cloud and identity have become critical single points of failure. CI/CD and SaaS integrations are the soft underbelly of modern enterprises, And ERP and CRM systems remain the crown jewels that attackers continue to go after. So what's the takeaway here? Well, every one of these layers, from cloud to identity to business apps, is both a dependency and a potential weapon against us. In the next slide, we'll stress test these scenarios and we'll explore what happens when one of these risks actually unfolds inside the organization and how early warning signals can help you respond before it's too late. All right, now let's stress test those risks and see what happens when they actually unfold in the real world. This slide is all about scenarios and early warning signals, what these attacks look like as they happen, and how you can spot them before they spiral out of control. Let's start with the big one, the identity cascade. Picture this. An Okta admin session gets hijacked through a stolen support token or a malicious auth application. Within minutes, the attacker starts issuing refresh tokens for connected apps like Microsoft 365, Salesforce, and ServiceNow. No phishing, no malware, just legitimate access using stolen tokens. From your logs, everything looks normal. But if you dig deeper, you'll notice a few red flags. Logins from unusual IPs, impossible travel patterns, and new auth applications suddenly requesting broad permissions like mail.read or files.read.all. Those are your early indicators. By the time users report anything, the data's already been exfiltrated. We have seen this exact pattern before in the Okta-linked attacks. Small cracks in the identity leading to massive SaaS-wide breaches. Next, we have the CI/CD backdoor scenario. An attacker injects a malicious workflow into your GitHub Actions or Jenkins pipeline, maybe by compromising a contributor account or abusing dependency confusion. The poison code gets built, signed, and deployed automatically into production. Now your systems and even your customers are running compromised software. And it's the same playbook used in the SolarWinds compromise. And it's why F5's breach, where source code and vulnerability data have been stolen, is so alarming. The knowledge could actually fuel to the next supply chain attack. What are the early signals? Well, unusual pull requests from unknown contributors, unsigned artifacts, or new CI variables appearing out of nowhere. If you see those, freeze the pipeline, investigate before pushing anything live. Now imagine the cloud region brownout. Your entire AWS workload suddenly starts timing out. The root cause? Well, a regional network failure or a misconfiguration inside AWS. Something like the October 2025 US East 1 outage that froze thousands of apps and websites. The signs show up as latency spikes, a sudden flood of 5xx errors, so 500 something errors, or dropped connections in one region while others stay fine. The good news is you can see it coming if you are monitoring cross-region metrics. The bad news is most organizations still are not. If you are relying on a single region, you are one fold away from total downtime. Then there's the ERP extortion scenario, the club classic. A 0 day in your Oracle e-business suite or SAP portal gives attackers pre-auth access. They silently pull financial records, HR data, supplier contracts, and a week later you get an email saying they'll publish it all unless you pay. By then, forensic evidence is scarce because the exploit left almost no trace. Early indicators here include unusual traffic hitting endpoints like /OAA HTML, configured to your servlet or the sync servlet, exactly the paths used in the Oracle EBS campaign we analyzed earlier in the previous videos. If you spot that in your logs, that is a breach in progress. Finally, we have the edge or CDN outage scenario. Your sites and APIs go dark, not because you were not attacked, not because you were attacked actually, but because your CDN or WAF provider just went down. We saw this when Cloudflare, which served as again 36% of Fortune 500, experienced global routing disruptions. When that happens, users can log in, transactions fail, and customer trust takes a hit. What are the early signs? Error spikes across multiple regions, especially on login redirects or API calls. And if your fallback plan is wait for Cloudflare to fix it, well, there's a chance you're already too late. Across all these scenarios, one theme then repeats, which is early detection buys time. Each of these events start with subtle clues: token anomalies, build system noise, API errors, or sudden latency. If you're watching the right telemetry, you can reach out, at the right people and react before an incident becomes a crisis. In the next slide, we'll go from detection to action. So we'll build like a 12-week plan that helps you patch, harden, and prepare for these exact scenarios before they hit your environment. Now that we have seen how these scenarios unfold, let's talk about what we can actually do to get ahead of them. This slide is your 12-week action plan, a practical roadmap to strengthen defenses, shrink the blast radius, and make your enterprise harder to break. It's not theory, it's based on what we learned from the previous incidents, Oracle, F5, Collins, AWS, and from the hundreds of companies caught in the ripple effect. Let's break it down week by week. So weeks 0 to 4, secure the foundations. This is where you focus on identity patching and resilience. Start with your identity providers, implement FIDO2 keys for all admin accounts, and disable open OAuth consent across your tenants. That one change blocks an entire class of token theft and session hijacking attacks, exactly the kind used in Okta-related breaches. Next, move fast on patching and configuration hygiene. Apply any critical fixes for systems like Oracle, EBS, F5, or other vendor edge devices. Remember that the organization that patched within days of Oracle zero-day disclosure avoided CLOPS extortion emails entirely. And while you are at it, isolate any public ERP or management interface behind a VPN or identity-aware proxy. Finally, prepare for the unexpected. Rehearse a region evacuation drill in your main cloud provider. The AWS outage proved that a single region can cripple entire operation if you don't have a tested failover plan. So maybe multiple region resiliency and failover plan might actually work and might do the trick for you. Weeks 5 to 8, we have the lockdown to supply chain. Now it's actually focused on, the right time to focus on development and SaaS posture. Switch your CI/CD pipelines to short-lived OIDC credentials and stop using long-lived tokens in GitHub Actions or Jenkins. Enable artifact signing and verification before every deploy. That's the simplest, cheapest insurance against a SolarWinds-style event. And then move to your SaaS stack. Deploy a SaaS Security Posture Management Tool, or CASB, that flags suspicious behavior across apps like M365, Salesforce, and ServiceNow. Things like bulk downloads, new admin accounts, or odd OAuth scopes. This is where many companies get caught off guard, because these tools are cloud native and often sit outside traditional SIEM coverage. If your platform supports bring your own encryption keys, the BYOK, enable it. It's one of the best ways to reduce your exposure if a vendor gets breached. Then we have the weeks 9 to 12, when it's time to build resilience and governance. Now we move from reactive to proactive. Tier your vendors by blast radius. Ask, for example, if this supplier fails or is breached, what happens to us? Start with the big ones, AWS, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, Workday, ServiceNow, and ensure every contract includes telemetry SLAs and defined RTO, RPO targets. Push vendors to provide rapid breach notifications and integrate them into your own incident response workflows. And next, harden the edge. Implement a dual CDN strategy so you're not fully reliant on Cloudflare or Akamai. Keep DNS time to leaves short so you can actually redirect quickly during outage. And finally, do a tabletop exercise. Simulate a supplier breach, a CI/CD compromise, and a cloud outage. This will help you see how your teams communicate, will show you what breaks and where you lose visibility. That's how you expose blind spots before attackers or outages do. By the end of these 12 weeks, you will have an enterprise that's measurably stronger, with hardened identity, secure pipelines, resilient cloud architecture, and a vendor ecosystem you actually understand and control. In the next slide, we'll actually take this plan a step further and show how to translate it into clear ownership, mapping each risk to the control, the team, and the metric that keeps it in check. So we have built our 12-week plan. Let's now make it stick. This slide is all about controls, accountability, and measurement, turning high-level strategy into repeatable, owned actions. Because if nobody owns it, it won't get done. Here's how you do it. Build a simple control map that ties each risk to a specific control, an owner, and a measurable KPI. Think of it as your who does what when it matters chart. Let's start with the identity cascade risk, the octa domino we talked about earlier. The control here is strong authentication and blast radius containment. That means, once again, FIDO2 keys for all admins, strict OAuth governance, and a 24-hour token kill capability for compromised accounts. Who owns it? Your identity and access management team, backed by SecOps. And your KPI? Well, 100% of privileged accounts enrolled in FIDO2 within 30 days. That could be an example. No wiggle room, it's measurable, binary, and board friendly. Next, the CI/CD supply chain vector, the GitHub or Jenkins compromise that can poison every build. The control? Well, SLSA aligned pipelines with artifact signing and verification. Your owner? DevSecOps, working with engineering, most probably. Your KPI? 100% of production artifacts cryptographically signed and verified before deployment. This is one of those controls that directly prevents a SolarWinds style attack. Then we got the cloud region outages, the AWS US East 1 scenarios, just as an example. The control is multi-region failover and tested recovery. Owner, cloud engineering. KPI could be critical workloads can be evacuated to an alternate or separate region in under 30 minutes. You'd be amazed how few organizations have ever timed their failover. For the ERP zero-day extortion risk, think Oracle or SAP, the control is simple: no internet exposure for ERP. Enforced WAF policies on non-vulnerable URIs, and quarterly patch cadence tied to Oracle's CPU cycle. Owner could be application security or your ERP operations team. KPI, 0 externally exposed ERP endpoints verified monthly. That one KPI can literally stop club-style attack before it starts. Now let's talk about the SaaS data siphon. Those risky Salesforce and M365 integrations, remember those? Well, the control is, again, SaaS posture monitoring and DLP. Tools that catch bulk downloads, suspicious OAuth applications, or privilege creep. Owner, security operation could be working with data governance. KPIs, all tier 1 SaaS apps monitored by SSPM, for example, with anomaly alerts enabled. And finally, we got the edge resilience, your protection against Cloudflare style outages. Control could be a dual CDN architecture and DNS agility. Owner could be the network engineering team. KPI, failover tested quarterly with service restoration under 5 minutes. Once you have defined this, wrap them in a governance layer, a monthly risk council where each owner reports progress and blockers. That meeting turns your slide deck into operational reality. And here's the real value. When a board or regulator asks, how are we mitigating systemic third-party risk? You can show them a live dashboard with every control, owner, and metric in green or red. No guesswork, no jargon, just evidence of control. This is where cybersecurity moves from being reactive to being managed like any other business function. Measurable, accountable, and transparent. In the next and final slide, we'll wrap everything up, highlighting key takeaways and giving you the free resources that will help you put all of this into practice immediately. All right, so let's now bring it all back together. If there's one thing the last few months have taught us, from Oracle e-Business Suite 0-day to the F5 nation-state breach, the Calling Airspace ransomware incident, and the AWS outage, it's that digital dependencies have become the new attack surface. The line between your company and your suppliers has completely blurred. You are not just defending your own systems anymore. You are defending your vendors, your cloud regions, your APIs, and your entire ecosystem. Let's recap now the key takeaways from all this journey. First, visibility is everything. You can't protect what you don't see. Map your third-party dependencies from cloud and identity to SaaS, CI/CD, and edge. Know exactly who you rely on and what happens if they fail. Our earlier analysis on the F5 and AWS events proved that most organizations were blindsided simply because they never mapped their dependency chains. Second, single points of failure are the enemy. We saw it on AWS US East 1 and the Club Oracle attack, and of course the Calling Airspace disruption. A single vendor glitch or compromise can actually ripple across industries in hours. Architect for redundancy, segmentation, and failover like your business depends on it, because you know what, it does. Third, trust nothing by default. Zero trust isn't or shouldn't be just a buzzword. It's a survival principle. Applied to vendors, integrations, and even your own automation. The F5 breach was proof that even trusted suppliers can be compromised silently for months. Fourth, time is your true defense. The faster you detect, patch, and contain, the smaller the impact. When Oracle issued its emergency fix for the EBS 0-day, organizations that patched within 72 hours avoided club's extortion entirely. Speed of response matters more than perfection of control. Fifth, we have accountability drives resiliency. So every major risk needs a control, an owner, and a metric. It's not enough to say we are aware, we need to measure. How long does it take to rotate tokens after an identity breach? How quickly can we evacuate from a failed cloud region? How many critical vendors have we tiered by blast radius? When those questions have clear answers, you are not just managing cybersecurity, you are managing systemic business risk. And lastly, this. Resilience is not luck, it's design. The companies that came out of this crisis fastest were not lucky, they were prepared. They had multi-region deployments, token kill automations, and contracts that guaranteed telemetry during vendor incidents. So if you take one thing from this lesson, let it be this. Start building now for the crisis you will face tomorrow. Because whether it's a 0-day, is a supply chain breach, or a cloud outage, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And that wraps it all up for today's session. Thank you so much for watching and stay with me through this deep dive and I would say quite a long presentation, a long video. We covered actually a lot, from the Oracle e-business suite 0-day exploited by Klopp to the F5 nation-state breach, the Colin Airspace, the AWS outage. They reminded us how fragile our digital world can be. Together we have then unpacked what ties all these incidents together, the hidden dependencies that shape every modern enterprise, and we built a roadmap to make sure your organization isn't the next one caught in the blast radius. If you want to go deeper into the technical side of this, you can check out our dedicated videos, the Oracle EBS 0-day breakdown, where we analyze the CV 2025-61884 and 61882 in details, and the F5 breach deep dive, which explains how nation-state actors turned a single vendor compromise into a potential global exposure event. Both links have popped up in the video by now, along with all the free resources that we discussed on those videos. So we have a patch and defense checklists, we have threat hunting queries packs, and full supply chain risk report, and also slide decks. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is the most dangerous single point of failure in today's enterprise landscape? Drop your answers in the comments below. I'll feature some of the best insights in an upcoming episode. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like, share it with your team, and of course subscribe to the Daily Signal so you never miss our next breakdown on the threats that really matter. I am Max from Point Break Security. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay secure, and I'll see you in the next one.